When we think of survival tactics, many people focus on modern crises like natural disasters or conflicts from the last few centuries. But survival has been a challenge for humans since the dawn of time. Ancient civilizations had to overcome extreme environments, hostile neighbors, and unpredictable natural events. They didn't have the modern tools that we rely on today, but their methods of storing food, building shelters, and defending against threats were advanced for their time and can still offer valuable lessons for modern-day preppers. So we're going to take a look into how ancient civilizations used creativity and resourcefulness to survive, often under the harshest conditions. Roman food storage, mastering grain and wine preservation. The Romans were masters of logistics and food storage, which allowed them to expand their empire and support massive cities like Rome. They relied heavily on two staples, grain and wine. Without the benefit of modern canning, they used ingenious methods to store these essentials for long periods. Grain storage techniques. The Romans knew that controlling humidity was key to keeping grain fresh. They developed large, sealed granaries that were elevated to keep out rodents and moisture. These granaries had small holes in the walls to allow airflow, reducing the chance of mold and spoilage. They often sealed grain in jars and buried those jars underground in cool, dry places. This slowed down the deterioration of food, a method that many ancient cultures shared. Wine preservation. Wine, as an important part of Roman life, was stored in large clay amphorae that were sealed with pine resin or pitch. The resin created a barrier that kept air out, slowing oxidation and spoilage. The Romans understood that certain areas and conditions kept wine from spoiling. They transported wine in ships with hulls designed to regulate temperature, using clay containers to manage the heat. So what can we learn from this? Keep food storage cool, dry, and sealed from the air. Using natural elements to regulate the temperature, like underground storage or insulating materials, can extend the life of essential supplies. Medieval town sieges. Resilience behind high walls. Medieval towns and castles were often under threat of siege, where food, water, and supplies were cut off for months. Townspeople had to make do with what they had inside their walls, and this meant stretching resources as far as they could. Food conservation. Rationing was the first line of defense. The town's leaders would immediately implement strict rationing systems, ensuring the population would not run out of food prematurely. Salted meat, dried fish, and hardtack were the go-to survival foods. Waste nothing. In sieges, even animals like horses, yes, dogs, and pigeons could become food when times got desperate. Bones were boiled down for soup, and hides were softened for consumption. Water purification. Since fresh water was often cut off during sieges, many medieval towns developed cisterns to collect and store rainwater. They had primitive filtration systems using layers of sand, gravel, and charcoal, that sounds familiar, to filter the water, keeping it clean for drinking. Psychological warfare. Siege warfare wasn't just about physical survival. Medieval towns often relied on psychological tactics to outlast their enemies. Sometimes they would stage fake feasts on the walls, giving the impression that they had abundant supplies, hoping to demoralize the besieging army and force a retreat. So what does this mean for us today? Rationing early, securing water, and maintaining morale are key to surviving long-term isolation or being cut off from the outside world. Stockpiling salt for food preservation and rain collection barrels for water storage can mimic these medieval strategies. The Inuit people, thriving in the Arctic cold. Few environments are as unforgiving as the Arctic, yet the Inuit people have lived there for thousands of years. Their survival techniques are a testament to human adaptability. Building shelters. One of their most well-known structures is the igloo, a dome-shaped shelter made of packed snow. Snow, surprisingly, is a good insulator. trapping body heat and keeping the inside of the igloo relatively warm even in sub-zero temperatures. During the summer, they used whale bones and driftwood to construct tents covered with animal hides, providing shelter that allowed airflow but kept out the cold. Hunting and food storage. The Inuit primarily hunted seals, whales, and fish. One of their clever techniques was to store seal meat in underground ice cellars, where the cold naturally preserved the meat. They also fermented fish and whale fat, providing crucial nutrients during the winter months. The Inuit diet was almost entirely made up of meat, and they knew how to make the most of it. Seal fat was essential not just for food, but also for oil lamps, which they used to heat their homes and cook food. So how can we use this information? Utilizing natural insulators like snow or earth can help regulate temperature. In extreme climates, relying on local resources for fuel and creating efficient, low-energy shelters can be the difference between life and death. Ancient Egypt, surviving in the desert. Living in the desert forced the Egyptians to master water conservation and crop storage in an arid environment. They created techniques to sustain life even in one of the most challenging climates on Earth. Water management. The Egyptians built an impressive system of canals and reservoirs to manage the annual flooding of the Nile. They channeled water to their fields through a series of irrigation systems, creating fertile land in an otherwise barren landscape. They also used large, sealed stone jars to store water in their homes, keeping it cool even in the blistering heat. Food security. Like the Romans, the Egyptians stored vast quantities of grain in silos. They developed long-lasting, preservable foods like flatbread and dried fish. Beer was another essential part of their diet. Not only was it a source of calories, it was also safer to drink than water in some cases because the brewing process killed bacteria. So how do we apply these ideas for modern times? Irrigation and creative water storage can sustain life even in arid conditions. Long-term food storage is critical, and brewing or fermenting may help purify water and increase its shelf life. The Mongols, mobile survivalists. The Mongols were legendary for their ability to survive and thrive in the harsh steppes of Central Asia. Their nomadic lifestyle meant they needed to be mobile and self-sufficient at all times. Portable shelter. The yurt was their home, a round tent made from felt and wood. It was easily collapsible and could be carried on horseback. Despite its simple structure, it provided excellent insulation against the freezing winters and cool shade in the summer heat. Food for the road. The Mongols relied on dried meat and curd, which is a type of dried milk product, to sustain them on their long journeys. These foods were lightweight, portable, and packed with calories. They also carried fermented horse milk, which provided them with hydration and nutrition during long treks across the plains. All right, so what are our modern takeaways? Well, compact portable shelters and high-calorie, non-perishable foods are essential for a mobile survivalist lifestyle. Dried meats, milk-based products, and fermented drinks offer long-lasting nourishment. Ancient civilizations faced challenges we can barely imagine today, but their survival tactics hold valuable lessons. These historical methods remind us that survival is about adaptability, resourcefulness, and clever use of available resources. By understanding and adapting these age-old techniques, we can better prepare ourselves for whatever the future does hold. Survival, after all, is timeless.